once again, I'm Taylor. We'll be talking about our website, A World of Women in STEM. So we started WOW STEM in the summer of 2020. We kind of just came up with this idea then, and for the next year, we started building different content and the website so that we could launch in September of 2021. And since then, we've been posting about every other week. Now we've moved to once a month so that we can really create this platform, this free resource that has, that's really a space that we wish that we had as young girls interested in science. It's an engaging, expansive, and equitable community for people who are curious about STEM.
What age group?
So we're aiming for people that have about a middle school to mid-high school education science level. And so we hope that this is like a really good level for young people who are just picking their classes on what they want to do in the future, and also a pretty good level for a lot of adults who didn't, continue on learning about science, so we can get a really broad audience as well. But our focus audience is really middle school to high school. So the start of WOW STEM was really me and two other Harvard graduate students, Madeline, who I think some of you might have been on email threads with, and Katie. And we were the co-chairs of the Women in Physics group at Harvard. And we were really trying to explore how we can get more involved in outreach. I don't know what that noise was. Okay. Okay, perfect. So we were co-chairs of Women in Physics at the time, and we really wanted to have a way for people to get more involved in outreach and reach, really contribute to the community more. And one idea was this website platform, and it actually came about because Madeline had this really great class that she had made for one of the Harvard summer schools. And she was really excited about it. She was going to do this whole course on historical women in science and go through the science with high school students. But this was the summer of 2020, so it was canceled. But we decided that this was a great opportunity, that this was all great content and we can continue making this great content. So let's build a website where we can share this internationally even. And so that was the start of the idea. And since then, we have 32 blogs. We're posting a new one tomorrow, so watch out for that as well. We have over 2,500 followers on all of our different social media platforms. We have over 100,000 views on the different videos that we have, and we have over 10,000 views on the website as well, which is really exciting. And we really hope to continue growing. So WOW STEM is meant to be fun and engaging and accessible for the viewers. So each post, we highlight a specific woman in STEM, either historical or modern, and we talk about their science, what they did. And through that, we make TikToks, we make YouTube videos. We also have a blog post so that it's in written form, and we have activities to go with each of them as well, so that you can really interact with it in any way that's best for you, best for young students as well. And so we've carefully crafted each of these different sources of media so that it's accessible for tweens and teenagers. And we also have custom art, with each of the posts. Like if you can see here, we have one about how the brain and the digestive system can kind of communicate. We also have additional resources on each of the pages with our sources and deeper learning activities as well. So here, hopefully this works for people online at least. Sorry for everyone in the audience. This is just a video of, it's not a touch screen here. Okay. A video of scrolling through the website just to give you an idea of what it looks like. So here, if you can see it, is the video of going through the front page. We have the different posts. We have recent posts. You can see we highlight a STEM hero each month from our different blogs. There's also a way that you can nominate your own STEManista, as we put it, And we have historical figures and we have modern scientists as well. And we also have another section, ancient knowledge, where we go over ancient knowledge, how that also is kind of an underrepresented source of science. And so here we're looking at the historical figures, and there's also we have quite a few Spanish translations now, and we are continuing to expand that as well. We also have other translations. I believe we're translating soon into Korean and Japanese. So that will also continue to expand the website to reach a more international audience. Now it's showing an example of one post, how we have the blog post, we have the video in there, and all of these fun visuals as well within the post. Yeah. Oops, it's starting over. I think if you click the arrow, maybe next. Yeah, perfect. Okay. But why do we have this resource? So really, early interventions can really help improve girls' sense of self-efficacy. And self-visualization is really essential to form a STEM identity. These young girls really need to be able to see themselves as scientists. And we really hope the World of Women in STEM website can really help young girls in particular realize that they can also do science. And so we highlight scientists from historically underrepresented and excluded groups so that we can really expand young girls' idea of what a scientist is. And also by making this science accessible, they can say, oh, this is really cool and interesting, and I could see myself doing that. So we really hope to empower them to see themselves in STEM and increase their perception of self-efficacy. Yeah.
There's a question on the chat.
Yes, okay.
Do you
have a Hall of Fame for your historical figures? I would say probably our whole historical figures section would be our Hall of Fame. It would be interesting. I don't know if you mean like maybe ones that have done particularly amazing work. I think all of them that we've highlighted so far are worthy of Hall of Fame. Yeah, status.
So you ask, where is Marie Curie?
So one thing is we are trying to really highlight scientists that have historically been underrepresented. So Marie Curie did amazing work, but she was probably one of the most famous women scientists. So we probably will do her one day, but there's a lot of other.
It's disqualified.
The first one is too many.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully we will highlight her as well one day. But for now, we're focusing on other scientists.
Do you have a way of judging the success other than counts of people who came to the site? Do you have any other way of judging?
You mean like so you're talking about how well our content? Oh yeah, the question was, do we have a way of judging how well our posts do? Is that what you mean?
Can you tell, maybe it's too soon, but can you tell whether or not people who have looked at this have in fact altered their view of the world and are taking more science courses, for example?
Right. So the question was, can we tell if this is actually making the impact that we want? Are these people that we're reaching taking more science classes?
Or is it just too soon?
Or is it too soon? Yeah, so it is too soon, I would say. And it's also would be really hard to tell. I think right now we're really just focusing on expanding our audience and trying to reach them. When we first launched, we did have a focus group of about, I believe 15 young women around middle school to high school age look at the website and tell us their thoughts on it. And we got really positive feedback on those, but that was, at the beginning of the launch. So at this point, we've expanded our audience, but it is really hard to tell whether the audience is actually our target audience, for one, because you can't really get that information on who is viewing it. You can get the number of people. On TikTok, you can get whether they're male or female, but you can't get their age, which I think is good. You don't really want people's age publicly on social media websites like that. but it is hard to tell. I think one thing in the future that we would like to explore is maybe doing some sort of survey with our audience. Once we have a really good platform, we could do a survey saying, let us know how this has impacted you, or even reach out to parents and see if they think this has really had an impact. Yeah. Okay. So let's see, where are we now? Okay. Now we're talking about our contributors. Yes. So our contributors that help us build all of this content really develop a wide range of science communication skills by helping us. All of our contributors the only requirement is really that you're curious and creative and excited about our mission. And we also really value having contributors that have a really diverse expertise and backgrounds, so that we are able to tell the stories of these diverse women and their diverse science as well. Right now, a lot of our contributors are physicists at Harvard, since that is the founding members, but we really have started to expand. We actually have people all over the world contributing now. We have someone in Thailand, I believe, and in Australia contributing regularly, and across the US as well. But for our contributors, they really, they do everything for us, and us as well do all of this work as well. They write the blogs and the scripts for the videos. They do the actual filming for the videos and editing for the videos, creating the scientific diagrams that we have. Unless it's cited, all of these illustrations that we have are made by one of our contributors themselves, specifically for the blog post, and much more. I personally have learned so much being involved in WowSTEM. It's been really amazing. Yeah, okay. Let's switch and do our own introductions really fast.
This is a really quick introduction about ourselves. So my name's Yan, and I'm a fifth year at Harvard doing PhD in physics. So I study condensed matter theory. I'll explain the slide what that entails too.
Could you talk a little slower?
Yes.
Yeah.
Louder. Louder. Okay. Sorry, English is not my native language. But just interrupt me if you don't find me clear, and I can just repeat what I just said. So I became a contributor to WowSTEM about a year ago. And it's been an amazing journey, even for myself, to learn about the work that I myself find interested in. And in my free time, I do rock climbing, and I'm very interested in calisthenics too. And so just a little bit about my own research. So I'm really excited about the interplay between topology and physics. And so what topology, you can think of it as a shape that has particular feature, and you can try to deform the shape, but no matter how you deform it, as long as it's a smooth deformation, you cannot change the fundamental property of the shape. And so if you can see, there's a picture of the torus, and it's topologically distinct from a sphere, for example. And so one of the things that I'm interested in to study is so-called quantum spin liquids, and it's a topological state. So to visualize it, think of a magnet in a room. You have north-south pole of a magnet, and it's a piece of matter that has particular properties. Quantum spin liquids, which I study, is not this simple. There's no easy feature like the north and south pole to identify it easily. But turns out this topological matter is important for problems like high temperature superconductor, topological quantum computing, stuff like that. So for the past several years, I've been trying to find ways to either come up with some experimental techniques to detect such phase, or theoretical signatures. And that's what I do for my work. And there's a lot of you here in this room have backgrounds in science and related fields or other fields. Feel free to ask me questions if you have any. Right, and then we'll switch to Taylor.
Yeah. Great. So once again, I'm Taylor. I realize I don't think I've updated my website because I'm actually a 5th year graduate student at Harvard now. I do particle physics experimental, and I am also the vice president of WowSTEM. And a little bit about my research as a particle physicist, I actually focus on the particle called the neutrino. On the left here, you can see the standard model, all of the different fundamental particles that we know of, and the neutrinos are on the bottom there. I think they're the most interesting of the particles, but I might be a little biased. Yeah. I myself am particularly interested in the fundamental question of whether the neutrino has a distinct antiparticle or whether the neutrino is in fact its own antiparticle itself. And as an experimentalist, I focus on building detectors and experiments that we can actually say for sure whether the neutrino is its own antiparticle or not. And we do this with experiments that look kind of like this diagram on the bottom right of the screen. We have this giant cylinder of xenon gas in it with an electric field through it so that we can really see a type of decay called double beta decay. And if we see a particular kind of decay called neutrinoless double beta decay, that would prove that the neutrino is its own antiparticle. I don't want to go into the details of that here unless you guys have questions later. But yeah, so we're looking for a very particular kind of decay in this xenon gas. And so here on the right, you can see as an experimentalist, I've helped build some of these detectors. Here I'm helping build the field cage so to create the electric field that we need through the detector. We also are currently building one. This is an international collaboration, actually. The actual detector is in Spain, currently being built. And I also help a lot with simulating future detectors because we really will need to get to actually a much larger size detector to really discover the nature of neutrinos, whether it's its own antiparticle or not. Yeah.
Have you gone to South America to the big detector, neutrino detector that's in the South Pole?
Oh, Ice Cube.
Yeah.
I have not been there. I've heard it's actually.
Repeat the question, please.
Yeah, he was asking whether I have been to the neutrino detector in the South Pole, which is Ice Cube. I have not. I've actually heard it's very difficult, even if you work on it, to get to Antarctica. But Ice Cube's really interesting. They actually study more astro neutrinos, particles, or neutrinos coming from space. Our detector is really focused on neutrinos produced in radioactive decay. So very different energy scales too. Mm-hmm. Ours is more of the MeV scale, and theirs, I think they've gotten like TeV, like, orders of magnitude different. But yeah, Ice Cube is very interesting as well. Any other questions? Cool. All right. So yeah, that's a little bit about our scientists or our science as women in this collaboration. But now I want to get back to the content of A World of Women in STEM. One of our biggest segments that we have is a Guess the Scientist, which we use to introduce our new blog post for the month. And so I'm going to play the game with all of you. Hopefully you'll be able to guess. I'll give you some clues and then maybe wait until the end of the clues and we can see if anyone can guess who this scientist is.
No yelling out the answer.
Okay, so first clue, this scientist was the daughter of romantic poet Lord Byron. In the 1840s, she all right. In the 1840s, she wrote what many consider to be the very first computer program.
Whoops.
She wrote instructions for how to program different operations in a machine called the Analytical Engine, an invention that was designed to compute complex mathematical problems with a huge system of gears run by a steam engine. All right, do we have any guesses? Yeah.
Ada Lovelace.
Yes, exactly. That is Ada Lovelace. I've heard you guys have heard a bit about Ada recently. So.
Personal friend. Some of us even programmed today.
Wow.
There's a play about her in Central Square.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that.
You live in Cambridge?
I know. I should know about that. I'll have to look that up.
There's a organization that works in the Central Square Theater that's made up of people from MIT mostly. And every year there are 1 or 2 technical plays that are done at that theater.
Wow. Okay.
There was one on a couple of years ago on a group of women who were early astronomers at Harvard. I think there was one on Bletchley Park. And then there was this one. Probably have missed some.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look that up. I don't know.
Plus you got a student discount.
Oh, yes, that'll be nice. Just checking the chat. I see that there was a question earlier that let me just go back to really fast. What's the distribution between theory and experiment of our posts? We try to have it fairly even. I don't know the exact distribution right now, but we have gone over theorists and experimentalists. Yeah. And yes, a few others also guess Ada Lovelace, so good job. Sorry, I don't know why I was making it. Right, so Ada Lovelace, here is just the title of our blog post on Ada Lovelace, the computer whisperer, writing algorithms for amazing analytical engines. And here is the portrait that we have that was made by one of our contributors, and some pictures that we have of the analytical engine and the punch cards used for that. Okay, so now the plan was to show one of our actual videos, particularly on Ada Lovelace. I don't know how well this will work with everyone on their own phones.
Well, no, why don't we do it off this?
That could work.
Turn around.
Or
Yeah, so we could do that.
also
I
have it
think
downloaded.
one issue is if everyone has sound on.
All of these will see it.
Right.
If you share that screen.
Okay.
Or is it embedded?
And everyone has it muted,
try it.
Yeah.
right? So it shouldn't be too much of an issue for the sound. And hopefully, did people online hear that sound when the video first started, or do we need to fix the sound of the screen sharing?
Check it again. Check it again. Yeah, we're getting something.
Perfect. Okay. So let's play.
Programmer wrote code for machines that didn't even exist yet. Her name was Ada Lovelace, and in 1842, she designed what would later be known as the very first computer program, 100 years before digital computers would be invented. Her work on early computing machines, precursors to the modern computers that you're using right now, pioneered the kind of logic that programmers still use today. Ada was born in London, England in 1815. She was raised by her mother, Annabella Byron, who was also a mathematician. Her father was Romantic poet Lord Byron, though Ada never met him as he left the family when Ada was just 4 months old. Her mother didn't want her to become too imaginative and flighty like her poet father, so her education was largely focused on mathematics and other subjects that were seen as unpoetic at the time, such as music and French. Even so, Ada did inherit some imaginative spirit from her father, but she channeled it into thinking about science and fantastical inventions instead of literature. When she was just 13, she designed a flying machine based on studies of the anatomy of birds. She even wrote a book, which she called Flyology, which detailed the results of her experiments, though she was never able to fully get her invention off the ground. Women in the early 19th century rarely studied math and science, and scientists of the era were nearly all upper-class men. One such scholar was named Charles Babbage, who Ada met when she was 17. He was a math professor at the University of Cambridge who was working on a design for an invention he called the difference engine. The difference engine was basically an early version of a modern calculator. It was designed to use repeated addition to compute complex polynomial functions using something called the method of differences. But instead of the electronics that modern calculators use, it would have operated using a mechanical crank that turned a huge set of metal wheels. Each wheel represented a decimal digit of a number from 0 to 9, so that a set of 20 wheels represented one 20-digit number. When one wheel turned from 9 to 0, it caused the next wheel to turn as well, automatically carrying the digit. While this seems like a very complicated way to do calculations, the difference engine was actually super advanced for its time. It could perform lots of calculations, temporarily store data for later use, and even print its output. And while it was definitely limited to one type of calculation, this automatic method was way easier than doing these complex calculations by hand. When Ada Lovelace learned about Babbage's difference engine, she was hooked. With her creativity and imagination, she was able to imagine the computer-driven future that Babbage proposed. Unfortunately, the difference engine was never actually built due to engineering challenges, but the pair soon moved on to designing a new invention. This one was called the analytical engine. Similar to the difference engine, the analytical engine was designed to operate using a set of metal wheels that each represented a digit of a number. The analytical engine was huge, designed to have hundreds of columns of gears that could each represent a 40-digit number. Because of its size, it would have to be powered by a steam engine instead of a mechanical crank, since the complex network of gears would be too much for someone to turn on their own. But the biggest difference of the analytical engine is that it was designed to be programmable. This means that it could perform many different types of calculations. To send instructions to the machine for what calculation it was supposed to do, Babbage and Lovelace imagined a way to talk to the computing machine using cards with patterns of holes punched into them. The holes would be in precise locations on the card that align with levers in the machine and cause specific wheels to turn. The patterns of holes could be designed for many different types of calculations, and multiple cards could be strung together for longer calculations. While this sounds a little silly, cards with punched holes were actually used all the way until the 1980s for programming modern computers and storing data, so it was actually a really clever idea. In 1842, Ada Lovelace was tasked with translating an article about Babbage's machine from French to English. But Lovelace did more than just transcribe Babbage's work. She also included her own original research. The notes, details, and explanations that Ada added to the paper were twice as long as the original text. They contained detailed explanations of the machine's operation, as well as instructions on how to program it to perform a huge variety of calculations. These instructions are the reason why Ada is often considered to be the first computer programmer. She wrote precise sequences of punched cards that could be used to instruct the analytical engine to perform specific calculations, and even described her work as learning a new language. This is exactly what modern computer programmers do. They communicate with computers through coding languages. But now, instead of using punched cards like the analytical engine, modern computers can understand written code. Tragically, Ada died only 9 years after her work was published at the age of 36. What's more, Charles Babbage was never able to complete the construction of the analytical engine, so Ada's code was never implemented. But the story is not all sad. We now live in a world completely dependent on the remarkable machines that Ada Lovelace helped us to understand. Even before the construction of the first computer, Lovelace was able to recognize computer science as an important field in its own right, separate from math or engineering. Her vast imagination allowed her to see the potential for computation nearly 100 years before the first computer was even built. Ada Lovelace's pioneering vision paved the way for making a space for women in computer science before computer scientists even existed. So the next time you power up your laptop or your phone, I hope you take a minute to think about the young woman who helped us figure out how to talk to these amazing machines.
Monkey organ grinders,
Oh.
and used to go raging out of his house to attack them on the street. He had a few loose screws.
Oops. There we go. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so that was an example of one of our videos highlighting a historical woman in STEM, Ada Lovelace. So as mentioned, Ada Lovelace translations greatly expanded on Charles Babbage's notes, including the original algorithm details and explanations. She was a true visionary, programming for machines that didn't even exist yet.
I thought that Babbage actually built had built a machine that would do logarithms, calculate logarithms, and that worked. He actually did produce some data. It's just when he tried to do something fancy. He had a lot of money from Parliament, and after a while they stopped giving him money, and he stopped dealing with it. I mean, as you said, mechanical difficulties were enormous. They had to invent new mechanical engineering, and it still didn't work.
Wow.
Of course, we can't hear you in the back.
Well, that's your good luck. So.
Yeah.
The textile industry started involved with looms and the adjustments you could do. And that's where they got the ideas from.
Oh, the jacquard loom, yeah, Ted.
Yeah,
Ted made the point.
I think somebody did in the chat, right, that the jacquard loom was there as well. Was that the contemporaneous?
Oh, it was earlier.
Earlier.
Yeah.
That was the wrong example for this group. That's what I've been talking about, the jacquard looms. Let's not.
Great. Can you go to the next?
Oh.
Earlier, you commented that most of the people in the room were men, which is obviously true. And when I was in school, of my freshman class of 900, there were 36 women. But I think that the numbers at MIT now are about 50-50.
That makes MIT still retro, because most colleges have a majority of females.
Yeah, I think that might be true at MIT as well.
Runs
I believe
around
the alumni
60-40.
magazines.
Oh, like in just overall
Just overall.
attendance. That's
I'm not
interesting.
talking overall, I'm talking about the percentage in technical fields.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if MIT is a particular case. I know overall across the US, it's still about 25% women in these technical.
The other thing is that there's a huge bias towards computer science and biology.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of that, I think, is because many of the women want to go into medicine, and biology is the obvious place to do it from. I'm not quite sure why computers is up at the top.
Yeah, I think.
Dealing with EMR.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. But, yeah, computer science. We just talked about one of the first, possibly the first computer programmer who was a woman, but the ratio is not great. Currently.
Computer science. Ratio is pretty good.
You can't really tell about MIT because 9% don't disclose their gender and 3% are another gender male.
Well, we do include, in our case, we usually say women plus because we want to include gender minorities as well. So that's actually an interesting statistic to add, actually.
I'm reading off the first year class profile for the class of 2026, and it's 43% male and 44% male, 43% female. And then the 12% that don't fall into those categories or didn't disclose.
That's the university as a whole or just the technical fields?
Was that
That's the members of the entering class.
entering class?
And it's
So
all-
entire.
So all every department is different. Computer emanated out of engineering, so it may have more males than a lot of other schools that didn't go that direction, where it started in the math department.
Well, back to the computer science numbers, I believe in the last few years, the studies that I've seen of all of the sciences, the percentage of women versus men, computer science is the worst, and then it's physics, and then I think it improves.
You can say gender versus men, it's okay.
Gender versus men.
What is the makeup of physics at Harvard?
At Harvard, that's a good question. I don't. I know in the graduate programs we have about 30% women, which is pretty good for graduate schools across the U.S. You know, still not. Yeah.
It also depends on the year and the specific subfield.
Well, Tello, I got to tell you something. This is David Kahn. This group of chauvinists actually had a talk on women in science years ago, and I volunteered to look it up. And the reason why I volunteered was Sheila Widnall from Lexington. She was the Secretary of the Air Force, and since I worked at Hanscom Air Force Base, and there was a lady in charge of the whole shebang, I thought it'd be interesting to do a paper on, I'm going to call them local women, and it was quite interesting. So, I will say this, that some of the ladies way back when in the 20s were instrumental in public health in cities and towns. I even found some ladies that did that. You may know of them.
Yeah, that would be really interesting if you want to share the articles.
Yeah, I think it's on our website.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I can put them on your. I can put my PowerPoint presentation on your website, and you might enjoy it.
Yeah.
Dave, send it to Steve to make sure that we have it on ours, and that way, it'll be there anyway for everybody that wants to see it.
Okay, I can put it on. Maybe I can even. Yeah, I'll put it on. It won't fit on chat, but I'll
email it to me, David. Just send it to me by email.
Okay, I'll send it to you, Steve. Okay, good.
In Harvard, which graduate discipline was women?
Well, most of us here are in our 80s, and I'll tell you one thing. When I was going to high school, one of my lady friends there in high school, she wanted to be a nurse, but we all took the tests that they were developing for what what you're good for, for a future career. She said, I would do great as an engineer. Well, hey, if you're going to be a nurse, you're going to use the same, but anyway, I thought it was funny. She couldn't believe that, she'd make a good engineer.
Very interesting. Yeah, what was your question again?
The specialties at Harvard.
Specialties at Harvard.
The largest complement of women.
They have the largest, yeah, complement of women.
Or whatever your audience is.
Best one. I know that a few of my friends in soft matter physics have a good number of women in their groups. I know personally for particle physics, it's about the average. I have heard that condensed matter is not as good as the wider ratios. But yeah, do you know?
In my group, it's actually really good. Yeah, my PI is very inclusive. I think it's about half and half. But in some other group, I see there's one woman and another yeah, it really also depends on the culture. Yeah. The high energy theory is also very low.
Greatly affected by non-Americans who are coming to
the question was whether those numbers are affected by non-American students, the percentages. I don't have a good idea on that, like the number of the women that are international students. That would be interesting to see, particularly percentage of like U.S. women going into STEM. Yeah, that would be interesting to look into. I don't have that number.
That'll be a second PhD.
Yeah. Got to get through this one first.
At the community center, be careful about stepping away from the microphone. We nearly lost your sound.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. Anyways, we were just saying that we don't know the numbers exactly of international women versus U.S. women going into STEM. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. Anyways, I'm sure it exists. I might probably look at that later. But yeah, okay. Maybe we can go back to Ada Lovelace on if there's more questions on this subject. Yes.
I'm concerned about your getting to the audience.
Yes.
Couldn't hear the question.
John, you're very weak.
Just a second. I'll repeat it once he's done.
I have a granddaughter who was in Lexington High School, taking the almost mandatory physics course. Easily competent, no interest, and she would not, I think, be interested in this.
Yeah.
And so we have the capability, and I think we can amount of self realization. I don't think she knows how good she is. But I do think that sells herself short, and Okay. But
All right.
Charlie, you better tell them.
Yeah, I'll repeat. Yeah, the question was really just concerns about whether we're actually reaching our target audience with a story about your granddaughter, was it? Yeah, his granddaughter who probably has good self-efficacy, but maybe wouldn't be interested in the website. And then did you have a further question?
Is she interested in English literature or in theater?
I've watched her go through this whole thing. Now she's talking about social work and psychology.
Yes. So
for a long time, when she was in the 3rd grade, she wanted to be a 2nd grade teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your question?
So,
what would? Yeah. What influenced us to get into science was the question. So me personally, I always thought science was interesting, but I didn't think I would go into science myself, whether it was because I didn't see role models for myself, or it was because my mom was a math teacher, and so I didn't want to take a similar path as her. But for me, it was really a freshman course on astronomy that I thought was taught so well and just really gave me the wonder of science.
Freshman college or freshman?
Freshman college, yeah. So first year in college, took this astronomy course and realized that how much more interesting it was than I had previously thought. And so I started taking physics because we didn't have an astronomy course, and continued to learn more about physics and became even more interested. I actually took a course on stellar astrophysics in undergrad, where they talked about the solar neutrino issue, if you know. And I didn't know that I would end up in neutrino physics at the time, but I think that was my favorite part of that course. So I think that really led me to be a particle physicist myself.
What about you, Yes?
Yeah. So I guess I was always also interested in.
Quiet, please.
It's okay. I was always interested in science. In China, like education is very emphasized, and it's just embedded in your head. And like I've always found like chemistry, biology, physics all very interesting. But not until I came to the US for college in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois. I took a chemistry class with a professor who happens to do research in physical chemistry. And so I started talking to him, and I got to do research, and then looked at quantum mechanics, and I just got hooked. And so, yeah, right. And after that, I've been like doing something with quantum, and now condensed matter theory, quantum materials.
So do you think of yourself as a theorist or an experimentalist?
Yeah, I'm a theorist, but I wasn't sure way back. I didn't know theory exists. It was just, science, physics, and it wasn't all clear, and just, gradual exposure, step by step, leading up to what I'm doing now.
When you came to Urbana, were you chartered in a scientific direction or the world?
I was undecided. It was called Division of General Studies. It's basically people who don't have a major. And I explored around, but yeah, science was just always there in the back of my head. And with the resources that I was able to get in undergraduate, I was able to explore this direction more.
So anybody in your family already in science?
No.
No. But in your family, your mother was
My mother was a math teacher.
High school?
High school. Mm-hmm. But that's all. No one else.
That's all.
That's science.
Charlie, to your point though, these women epitomize something that I've always believed, that you find the one teacher that influences your life, and it puts you on a trajectory. And if you're fortunate enough to have that, it's a wonderful thing. And I think most of us can point to one or maybe a couple of teachers somewhere in your education that did that.
a couple of courses they took.
Mhm.
They suddenly locked into it, and that's what happened to me sophomore year. You know,
Yeah, but it's the teacher of the course. I mean, you know,
it's one event.
Yeah.
Actually, for me, even before I came to the US, so the reason I actually wanted to come to the US to study is because I found out this website called edX. It's this MIT OpenCourseWare, and I actually took a physics class online before I came to the US. And that was just very interesting, very fascinating.
I took a course on EDX called The Science of Cooking.
Oh, I've heard about that.
I wanted to take that.
There are lots of things that can be viewed as science courses.
Yeah, the science of cooking actually is really interesting because we have our section on ancient knowledge, and we actually talk a little bit about cooking because cooking was traditionally done by a lot of women, and there is actually a lot of kind of science going into that, and that's not historically viewed. Yeah, a lot of chemistry.
It's a Harvard course.
Yeah, I think I have a friend who TA'd for that. It's very, yeah, probably, I don't know.
I have a question which you might have answered actually during the 2-minute period that my microphone, my audio was off over here. But in addition to the website information that you have, do you have any outreach to individual schools where you may be able to do something with a middle school or even elementary schools?
Yeah, we have some slides later a bit about the other kinds of outreach we do, but we do go to outreach events like the Cambridge Science Festival, which is where we came into contact with all of you. And we've also done different zoo events to talk to other like parents and kids. We are exploring how to get into kind of after school programs and see how our content can be used for that, which I think also comes back to the question of, is this really helping young students? I think one way for us to do that is also to talk with teachers and parents to see what the best way of getting this content out there is for the people that we're really trying to reach. And so we're still exploring that. I know during COVID, it was pretty much impossible to get into contact with teachers in schools. So we started to focus on just growing the content and website. But now I think we're at a really good place where we have this many posts that we can maybe come to teachers and say, we have these activities. We'd really love to hear what your thoughts are and how we can help you. One thing, for example, is I've made some like poster versions of the blog post, like a shorter poster version that maybe teachers could like post in their classrooms. Like, I feel like I've always seen ones on astronomy or physics and such. And I thought that these blog posts could make a great version of that. Maybe that's something that they could use in their classrooms. But yeah, we're still exploring kind of those options.
Part of the reason I mentioned that, by the way, is because I worked for about 12 years at Raytheon, and at least 7 of those years, I participated in something which they called Math Moves You, which actually sponsored some workshops for Girl Scouts, or I should say supported such workshops that were held at Northeastern or Middlesex College here in Bedford. And essentially, Girl Scouts came from all over the state to get their science badge. And it was really interesting to see the girls working from essentially drawings that some engineer at Raytheon prepared to build such things as in a little toy electric car or a catapult that was toasting marshmallows as far as 50 feet, you know. And it was a very effective communicating this concept of science being fun and everything else. So I feel the hands-on experience is a very, very important component of it if you can get it in there. Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. We have one contributor who is involved in Girl Scouts, and we have been considering looking into that, seeing what goes into a science badge for Girl Scouts and what kind of programming could we help with our content.
Let's let you go on with your talk.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's go on. So
I just like to comment a little bit on this because I've had some experience both writing an editorial, which I got unduly criticized for because of the title more than anything else. But and I won't mention that.
Repeat your question at the end where we come back to how we're reaching out, just so that we can get through the rest of the content, and we can come back at the end.
Well, I think it's important to put it in right now because of the nature of the thing. It has to do with, somebody just said it, hands-on, and it has to start early. The people who are successful as experimental plasma physicists all had backgrounds where they took things apart and put things back together, sometimes not so successfully. And if you didn't do that, if you didn't have some basic kind of hands-on skills, it was very difficult to get really into things in a serious way, because you're always going to be behind those other people.
We only have a half an hour left, and these ladies have a presentation they want to complete. So let's get back onto the presentation, and then we can pick up your comment afterwards, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, we'll come back. I think also note we do have activities for all of our blog posts, which hopefully students who are interested can also get that hands-on experience. But yeah, let's keep going. You want to? Let's go to a model.
Yeah, your screen timed out.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Let's just turn it back on. Okay, we're gonna actually switch up a little bit now. So we had a lot of very interesting and engaging discussions with Ada. But another scientist that we had a blog post on is Dr. Urmila Mahadev. So she's a modern scientist that we profiled. She studies theoretical computer science. We just talk about how we kind of get excited about the subject after taking class. And she found herself very excited about theoretical computer science after taking a class on RSA algorithm. And she, the topic of her research is a lot of theoretical computer science, but also quantum computing. And so I'll just I'll be talking about some of the work that she's done on this topic. But first, we have
another video.
So yes, so besides the official YouTube videos, we also have social posts like TikTok or Instagram. And here is a TikTok video that Madeline has done. I just play it.
I'm here live from your Tiny Pocket computer. I'm Madeline from WowStat. Most computers, just like the tiny pocket computer you call a phone, store information in the form of bits. A bit is very simple. Its value can either be 0 or 1, but nothing else. Obviously, using bits has gotten us pretty far. I mean, hello, tiny pocket computers. But there are some problems that bits just can't solve. So how are we going to improve computers if their most fundamental component is limited? Well, how about we take the bits and make them quantum? You may have heard the word quantum getting thrown around in superhero movies or sci-fi adventures, but it's actually a pretty simple concept. Quantum just means that some quantity, for example, energy, can only have discrete or quantized values. This means that the value of the quantity could be either 1 or 2 or 3, but it's not allowed to be 1.5. A cool property of quantum systems is that they can store more information than a normal classical system. If we take the bits, but make them quantum, we can actually store information in a much more compact and complex way. Put a bunch of quantum bits together and you've got yourself a quantum computer. The problem with quantum computers is that for a long time, we weren't really sure how to check that they were actually doing the calculations that we asked them to do. I mean, the whole point of a quantum computer is to perform tasks that a regular computer can't. So in most cases, we can't use a regular computer to check a quantum computer's work. So how are we going to get around this problem? Recently, a computer scientist named Urmila Mahadev figured it out. Her super clever solution was to get the quantum computer to check itself. Dr. Mahadev is now an assistant professor at Caltech, but she came up with the solution while she was still in graduate school. The short story is that Professor Mahadev found a way to utilize another really weird quantum phenomenon called entanglement. You can think of quantum entanglement as tying together independent properties like shape and color. We tie them together in such a way that knowing the shape of an object is enough to tell us about the color of the object as well. Professor Mahadeb proved that entangling a known object with the unknown calculation allows us to verify that the quantum computer is performing the correct series of operations. I mean, how cool is that? I've only got time for the TikTok-sized explanation, so visit the link in our bio if you want to learn even more about quantum computers and Amila Mahadeb's genius verification solution.
Do you really expect a high school or junior high school student to have any idea what she said?
Actually, yes. I thought that was a very well done TikTok video.
Was it? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the topic. Sometimes it can get a little technical, and we try our best to simplify it. So this is cutting edge research came out pretty much 2020, last year. And I think, I mean, at least to me, I find such kind of simple explanation very interesting. It can, if I'm interested in the direction, it can push me a little further into where I want to go. But definitely if you have suggestions on how we could generally improve, let us know.
Well, maybe you could just say, if you want more information on quantum computing, here's some easy sources to go to.
Yes.
But John, to your point, if someone on TikTok is worried about a $600 Dyson hairdryer, they're not going to pay attention to this. So, you know, it's the audience that self-selects to look at the videos.
I think the point too is that it piques curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
and then you look for information elsewhere. You can go up
Right,
and down and
it's always self-selecting. You know, if you're not interested in, you know, with three-dimensional manicures or something, you know, you're not going to go to this. You know, if you're interested in other things that are on TikTok, or starting an insurrection or something.
But I think Cindy's point is, you know, here is somebody who does not look like John Rudy.
Right.
Yeah, and so
somebody that looks like me, and you know, they're interested in science, and I can be interested in science too.
Yeah. But I think this is the, you know, woman who, you know, my granddaughter might very well be more interested in hearing what she has to say.
Absolutely.
Than hearing what I have to say.
By the way, he's a physicist. Prominent physicist.
But I'm saying you know, John is complaining about it's not a match to him.
Yeah.
That's
right. Wrong audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So
you know, it might get someone started with zeros and ones.
Walk more slowly.
And who knows where it goes. And also just note the state of for on the TikTok video. It's really, it just sucks you in. It attracts you.
That's why it was a good TikTok video.
If it looks something that looks like
yeah.
Yes. All right, we settled that.
Yeah.
Won't be an education.
We can come back to it again.
Yeah.
So right. So quantum computer has been, you know, very popular nowadays. Everybody's interested in it, but it's actually it was a quite hard problem to check if the quantum computer someone claimed they have is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. So why is the problem of checking a quantum computer hard? So first, Madeline sent me a TikTok video. A quantum computer is made up of qubits. So rather than bits, the number of bits you need in order to describe a system made up of qubits will scale exponentially with the size of the qubits. So if I have 100 qubits in my computer, which is really not a lot, I need 2 to the 100 number of bits to accurately, exactly describe it. And this number is very giant, and we cannot handle it. And besides that, the other reason you can't just check the calculation step by step as you would do in a classical computation is because if you check it, if you look at the computer changes its state. So you cannot do measurements at each step of the computation. So I put, how would you verify a quantum computer? It's a really, in the presentation, it's a really hard problem, and it wasn't solved for a long time. Yes.
Would you say that generalizes that? How would you, for example, check the speed of a very fast parallel computer? Wouldn't you need a very fast parallel computer to be able to do it precisely correctly? In other words, you'd never be able to keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just occurs to me that's a common thing. Or if you have a Babbage engine, you need a Babbage engine to check it, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Probably just repeat the question.
Yes. Yes. So for the audience,
I thought questions were for the end.
Fair enough. Okay, Tony.
We can take a short question and we can open up discussion at the end. But just to repeat the question for the audience on Zoom, the question is, you would need, if you have a high-speed computer, you would need, a similarly high-speed computer in order to keep up with the other one. And so one idea you might propose is to use another quantum computer to check one, right? But how do you know either one of them is working? So modern technology, right, we have built up from ground up so that we know one is working correctly, and then we can do that. But for a quantum computer, we don't know either one is good, and we cannot check it with a classical computer. And that was the crux of the problem. Okay. So the key idea in her work is the so-called interactive proof. For the computer scientists in the room, you're more familiar with it than I am. But essentially what it's doing is that, say I want to check a computer, and I have a computer in front of me, and I can ask it questions. And the question I ask the computer will be my test. I want to see if it's doing honest work. And so, for example, if my task is counting the number of leaves on the tree, I can ask the computer to count the number of leaves on the tree. And say I get a number, something like 30 leaves. And I got an answer, but I don't know if it's right? But now I can add 2 leaves on the tree, which has 30 leaves before. And the computer does not see that I just added 2 leaves. And I ask the computer again, how many leaves on the tree? What would the answer be? 30 plus 2, right? 32. But if the computer is not doing the honest work, it might guess, if it's guessing some number, it might not guess 32. And because I added the 2 leaves, I know the answer has to be 2 greater. And so this is a way to check, kind of analogy, to check if the machine is doing the work. And so so Dr. Mahadov really, is there a question in the back? I wasn't sure. Okay. Dr. Mahadov really incorporated this idea into verifying a quantum computer. And so the simple analogy of counting the number of leaves will have to be upgraded for something called the post-quantum cryptography test. But the idea is really the same. I have some kind of secret key, which is the 2 leaves that I just added, and the computer does not know that. And in order to pass my test, it has to do the honest computation. And the other piece of the puzzle is has to do with quantum mechanics, which is the property of entanglement. I only verified that the computer is passing my test, but in order for it to do actually useful work, I need to entangle the test that I just gave it to the actual calculations. And this is done through quantum entanglement, because quantum entanglement basically says, if I know that it's passing the test, then we also know that it's doing honest work. And that's basically the whole idea. And she had her eyes throughout her whole graduate school on this problem. And she has a lot of other work too, but She was so determined to solve the problem, and she stayed for 8 years in her graduate program. But she finally solved it. And this is a quote from her. I was never thinking of graduation because my goal was never graduation. Not until she solved the problem. And luckily she did in 8 years.
What school was she at?
She was at UC Berkeley, and now she's a professor at Caltech. Yeah, and that was a brief discussion on Urmila's work. And besides the two, we focus on computer-related technology because we know you guys are legacy of computer technology group. But we also do a variety of different topics on our website for the blog post. We have biology, chemistry, physics, math, all kinds of topics. And they are on the website for people to explore. And as mentioned earlier by Taylor, we also, besides focusing on individual profiles, we also do ancient knowledge like fireworks, pyramids, or we have an upcoming post on snowflakes. And so these are kind of fun ways for kids to get excited about something that they see every day, not just fancy science topics. And we're hoping that it's a good way to get something started in the direction of science.
Could you turn the computer so we could see her speaking?
Oh yeah. Oops, sorry. I walked a little bit to the front. Hopefully you guys could hear me on Zoom still. And yeah, the discussion of how do you actually reach somebody, if they're not just looking at the website, how do we reach somebody? We've done local events at zoo, Franklin Zoo, for the Halloween activity. I wasn't there. I think Madeleine and Taylor, you were there.
Mm-hmm.
And we got good engagement with kids. And I was at the Cambridge Science Festival, and a lot of younger kids came over with their parents. And we were able to talk directly with their parents, kind of leading them to some of the resources we have. And I met Cindy there at the event, and we had a fun chat leading to the conversation today with you guys. Cindy connected us to Lauren. And yeah, that's from the local parts that we do. Do you want to talk about collaborations?
Yeah, so we also make a point to collaborate with other organizations. We really want to really support anyone who is doing similar work in our field. And so one example is our work with Women Supporting Women in the Sciences, WS2, or I think it's WS squared is how they say it. But this is an organization that in particular, they make physics and material sciences lab kits for students in East Africa, completely free lab kits for those students. And in each one, they have a small profile of a scientist in that field of that lab kit. And so we have partnered with them to actually make a longer form post about these scientists that these students could then look up or have in the lab kit. So two examples of that are Dr. Cecilia China and Dr. Pendo Bigambi, who are both scientists from Tanzania that are material scientists. Another example is our collaboration with Astrofemina. This is an organization of leaders in STEM, different women leaders in STEM. And we have partnered with them to create this series called Role Models, where we interview some of their members of their organization. For example, Dr. Ariel Ekwa, who works in the space industry. And we just did one on Monday where I interviewed the first Latina astronaut in space, Ellen Ochoa. And so I'm very excited for those to come out. we have a few that are currently being edited, so that will be a new segment soon. While STEM has been possible with the support from a few sponsors and donors, we were able to get a small mini grant from the APS in 2021. And we've also had some support from, APS is the American Physical Society. And so many of us as physicists are members of APS. And we've also had some contributions from the Harvard Physics Department and Harvard SEAS, which is the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. And we also plan to extend our resources to support educators. As we were already talking about, we really want to reach out to schools and teachers to get this to be really an educational platform. And so one example of that is our collaboration with Galactic Polymath, which is an organization that creates that creates lesson guides based on cutting edge research in particular. So that's also very exciting.
What level of school?
They focus on high school level, yeah. We also continue to expand our audience through outreach to libraries like the Boston Public Library. We had a few joint events with them, like this event shown on the bottom left, where I actually was interviewed as part of this video game night that they had for the Teen Center, which was pretty fun. And on the right, you can see our TikTok, which has pretty good engagement. We're continuing to grow. We haven't quite gone super viral yet, but we really hope we will soon. We also hope to continue reaching out to schools and museums as well to expand our audience and reach out to educators. Yeah, so that is an overview of a world of living in STEM. You've gotten a little bit of everything that we do and why. So we would love if you wanted to get involved or just ask us more questions. You feel free to email either of us. And yeah, I guess we can spend the rest of the time discussing or having more questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ed has his hand up.
Do you folks know Karen Panetta at Tufts?
Hang on 1 second, please. There's a question in the room.
Yeah, one question from the room first, and then we'll get to you. Yes.
Just real quick.
How do we have time to do this?
What kind of support do you need?
Right. So all of us are mostly graduate students. So this is kind of just on a volunteer basis, doing what we can in our free time. And in particular, some of us have work on it more than others. Like as a vice president, I probably work on it one of the most. I basically just have this as, I do get my research done first, but this outreach I think is also very important to me as a scientist. And also for me, I'm applying to postdocs right now, and particularly postdocs that have a heavy outreach component that they say this is important. And so I would really like to still have a small part, because I still want to focus on the research, but for me, outreach is very important. And so it really varies. We also try and work with our contributors to see what they can actually contribute, right? So each of our blog posts, you can have one small part in it. If you just want to get involved a little bit, you can just be an editor and read over the scripts, or you can get even more involved and actually write a full script or edit a video, which takes a bit more time. And as far as support, we really are just trying to get by on a yearly basis right now, which includes funding for keeping our website up so that we don't have to have ads on our website. And also we really try and support our contributors by having what are we calling it? Honoraria. We have honoraria. We really try, our funding is really to support our contributors for their time that they're doing this. I think one big issue in outreach right now is that a lot of scientists are expected to do this extra work without compensation. And this also kind of falls on the underrepresented groups that do have to do this work more. So one thing that really value is compensating this extra work in particular.
This isn't really an issue of compensation much of the time. It's taking time away from research.
Yeah. The time, is a big deal. But to the people that really feel that it's important to them to spend this time on it, we really hope to still compensate them and say, you're valued for this work. Here's what we can do for you.
Taylor, Ted has his hands up.
Yeah, if you haven't contacted Karen Panetta at Tufts, I suggest you do it. She has a long history with the IEEE, with NASA, with presidential science scholars and all kinds of things. And she founded a group called Nerd Girls a number of years ago. She's an associate dean now at engineering at Tufts, and has a long track record of she was the first editor of Women in Engineering for the IEEE journal, and she was the she's a founder of Women in Engineering affiliation group, but she certainly was involved with it at its very earliest stages. And she's very enthusiastic about this stuff. And she's also charismatic, and she's been on Good Morning America or one of those morning TV shows and things like that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks
for
that.
Google Karen Panetta. Her name, I've always had trouble with spelling, but she's she's a niece of the Leon Panetta, who was involved with the CIA and also the Defense Department in different administrations. So she's somewhat famous.
Yeah, thanks.
What you can do is we can get your email address or whatever you want to do for that. We can publish that to the group. So if people have things questions they want to follow up, we can do that.
Yeah, that would be great.
And we can communicate that way. How many women are in your organization?
Currently, we are almost entirely women, which is about 40 contributors. I think we have 2 men who help us, which they're welcome.
I assumed women, and that was my problem. How many people?
Yes. Yeah, we welcome anyone to contribute, but we do try and have the people that actually present in our videos to be women in science.
Yeah. Understood. Understood.
We have maybe another question in the chat. Have you done anything with Rosalind Pickard at the MIT Media Lab? I don't.
No, we're not yet. We're looking at, yes.
We're looking into it.
I definitely saw her name as I was researching of people who do profile. And she's definitely another great figure to profile.
Okay, yeah, we'll add that to our list of people to reach out to.
Anybody else have any other questions, comments?
The Museum of Science.
Yes, that is one we haven't, that we do want to reach out to see how we can collaborate with them. That would be a great resource that we need to, pursue.
I would think the administration at Harvard probably has a connection there or two.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I think there's a previous Harvard physics person that actually works there that I chatted with for an informational interview when I was considering maybe doing more science communication than physics, although I'm set on staying in academia for now. But the Museum of Science would also be an excellent resource that we will definitely look into.
And personally, I was just thinking that for outreach, one of the areas you might want to look at is the independent schools. I was thinking specifically of a school that may be all girls, such as like Concord Academy, which is all girls.
Oh, yeah.
And there are some other schools around that are also all girls. So I think which is all Oh, it's not. Oh, it's not all girls. No, not anymore. You're right. The way it works. But okay, I'm wrong. But if you're looking to that audience, that's an interesting place to go, and they could always look for extra resources.
Yeah, that's a great point. The suggestion was to look at all women's schools.
Independent schools.
Independent schools. Yes.
I'd like to turn the tables. What could we do to help you? As opposed to us how we could do it.
Amen.
Great. Well, one thing is we are always looking for donations. Currently, our operating budget is not very large, but we are trying to get donations and also apply to mini grants. Our operating budget is about 2,500 right now, and we don't have any of that for this coming year. So really any amount of donations help. And one big thing that is my dream was to like be able to have a professional video editor, which is one thing that would be amazing and would also lessen the amount of work that we have to do ourselves. But that would be one of our bigger dreams.
Yeah, I think the Museum of Science should be another one of your immediate contacts, because I'm a volunteer there, been volunteer there for 30 odd years. And the museum is doing a lot in this area. There's a whole wall as you walk into the Blue Wing from the Hall of Human Life area that features basically, well, you could say, quote unquote, unconventional people in science and engineering in a sense. And there are a number of women in that little wall. They're just pictures basically. But the museum has also constructed a program around books and other materials that they have focused on people who are, they consider, officially underrepresented, whatever that means in a statistical sense, but people that you wouldn't ordinarily think of as being in science. And they have been working in that area. Michael Bloomberg, who gave $50 million to the museum, donated money specifically towards the education side of things.
Yeah.
So if you talk to them, they'll be hungry.
Yeah, we also are always looking for more suggestions on who we should highlight as well. If you know any amazing historical or modern scientists that we should highlight.
Well, Marie Curie, obviously, she should be number one on your list because of all the backstory, the forward story, and all the connections of her, and the fact that she is still the only person to have received 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 physics and chemistry, being the case of 2 science fields as opposed to the peace thing and other crap like that. Yeah. But there isn't anybody else. There's John Bardeen has 2 physics Nobel Prizes, but she's the only person with a physics and a chemistry.
Thanks, Ted.
I think you had another question.
I have a question about how do you, Marie Curie is great and everything, but superstar. How about normal stars, or just maybe not even stars?
Yeah.
Because most of us are not stars, but we're very happy in science. Yeah, right. but and I wonder to the extent that just interviewing people who are currently going through undergraduate colleges and letting them talk about how it is that they made that. We've asked several times, how do people make decisions to go into science? And that strikes me as the most important piece, not the challenging problems of the world. Just get them in there, and we'll see whether they'll see whether they really like it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that is one reason why we always try and have a bit of the biography to talk about how did they get interested and get involved in science. And I think that's also part of our interviews that we're doing with Astrofemina, is we go into what inspired you and what was what made that spark of this is what I want to do with my life. So maybe that will also help with that. Yes.
I've always felt the problem that you and anybody who's trying to get people from underrepresented groups is to try to change the culture. And you're doing that through going into some of these media and things like that. But one pointed question I have is, have you got people from other areas of science? Because we've been talking mainly of physics and computers, but you got chemistry, you got biology, at least, and other engineering areas, okay?
Right.
Do you have people that are working in those that can do, and do you have TikToks? Do you have anything that goes to those people? Because you're going to try to get people from all streams, from other areas to try to come in.
Yeah, the question is, do we have other contributors that do broader science as well? Because we have only highlighted computer scientists today, and we're both physicists. So the answer is yes, we do have other contributors. Right now it is heavy in physics because, you know, that is our network, but we are trying to expand. We do have a biologist and a astrophysicist and a chemist, and we really are continuing to expand. And even if we want to highlight someone that we don't have a specialist on, we'll find someone who can edit that so that they can check the science as well. So we do really want to highlight all of science as well, so that anyone who's interested in STEM, and then you can also get an idea of all of these different kinds of science.
How about the going through the life cycle? Say Barbara McClintock is one of the major scientists in the biological area. I don't know if she's on your site or not.
I don't recognize it, so she's not. I should add that.
One of the primary people who we are in genetics today.
Okay, could you send that to me through the email that we'll send out later? Yeah, I would happily add that.
Nobel Prize winner.
Great, yeah, Nobel Prize. We should definitely highlight those.
We'll put the contact information out to our group.
Yeah.
And also, come back to us if you have questions, if you want resources, you may ask me.
Yeah, that would also be amazing. If you guys have contacts in Museum of Science and such, like, we would also be very happy to get personal connections through that on how we can reach out to educators. Yes.
One thought I had is my wife was very interested in science and engineering as a child, but got actively discouraged. So do you have, or have you tried to have any understanding of what got in the way of younger women who were inclined to go in that direction? And I'm sure there's many who, said, well, you should become a nurse or a teacher or, or a psychologist or whatever was a female activity instead. And I can't imagine that's ending.
Yeah. So the question is, have we looked into what discourages young women to go into science? And yeah, I would say as we're looking into this, we do hear about that, especially from historical figures. Pretty much the majority of them have had discouragement throughout their career.
And discrimination.
And discrimination, yes. I think, yeah, that's one thing that our website does not focus on, of trying to remove those kind of barriers. Yeah, we're just really trying to say that anyone could do this. Of course, you need support. And I think that also is part of our, maybe not in a direct lesson that we teach, but all of the people that we highlight, they had some sort of support, some sort of mentor, that I hope that students realize that they should find someone who supports them to.
Even highlighting your own journeys, you didn't necessarily find a mentor, but you found an individual or a teacher who lit a spark.
Yeah.
And highlighting those kinds of things. Even though people, they may be, like your granddaughter, Charlie, may be discouraged now in terms of doing something. By just being exposed to something different, they may find somebody in their life to light the spark.
I don't think she's been discouraged. I think it's something else. I think it's more cultural.
Right. Perhaps. I don't know. Yeah. But it's a choice.
Yeah.
No, I actually started out as a physicist and then became a historian and then came back to physics.
And now you go back to historian again. You go back to
it's all different. It's like, right?
It's a. Do we have any other critical questions here?
One more. Mike has his hand up.
Partly a comment, partly a question, but the military has often been a little bit ahead of the curve. The fact that I grew up with a mother and father who had been in service in World War II, and my mother was an officer, she learned something of a culture of perform, get it done. That even when my mother encountered discriminatory circumstances, to get it done from the military culture helped. So when I grew up, I just thought women could do everything until I ran into women who thought they couldn't. And today the military has been, again, a bit ahead of the curve. some years ago at MIT when they were having the graduation for the ROTC. It was another example of that. The celebratory luncheon had a woman general talking about logistics. It was a celebratory dinner, and she's talking about getting it done in terms of logistics and military supply and science. And it was so different than most celebratory dinners, which are about jokes and food. And it was very striking. And the MIT military ROTC unit, of course, has been a leader in many ways. When Harvard pushed it off campus for a while, the Harvard men and women wound up at MIT. And 2 years, in fact, in a row, it was a woman from Harvard who was the commanding officer for the student group. So that part can be encouraged because mostly our military is democratic, and there have been many women after Grace Hopper.
Taylor, we have someone else who wants to talk online. Can we get someone in before it gets too late? Mike Alexander?
No, the discussion began to drift in this direction, but I thought maybe instead of just highlighting people and the things they've done, but you might want to have some of them talk about what stimulated them to get into their own fields. So that, I mean, in my case, I guess it was all there, but it was an 8th grade science teacher with whom I interacted. And other people will have other stories. And I think those stories will help people see how they might go into science themselves, not just be inspired by it, but actually get to it.
Yeah.
Mike, thank you. Thank you. Ladies, I'm gonna pull the plug here.
Okay.
It's getting late for everybody, and thank you very much for your time and for the wonderful work you're doing, and looking forward to hearing about good things that you do in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.